All right, welcome to the Robert Show. A happy Thursday, everyone. I have a very special guest today. It's none other than Eric Dodds joining us from the product marketing team of RudderStack. I'm super excited to chat with Eric because I've heard a lot of great things that he's done for the community as well. And I'm kind of curious to learn more about how RudderStack uses RudderStack from Eric because he comes from a product marketing team. So it's always good to have those questions for him. Also, we'll be talking about data maturity, data challenges, modern data stack, and about RudderStack. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions for Eric Dodds, and we'll be taking that. And do not forget to let us know where you're joining from. Definitely I'll be taking questions from the audience, so don't hesitate asking. And also we have a very cool giveaway that I wanted to let you guys know about is the AirPods that RudderStack is giving away. And what you need to do is type in #RudderStack, and also I've mentioned a link in the description so you can go and register for the event. We'll be announcing the winner tomorrow, so keep an eye, and all the best. Do not forget to type in #RudderStack. All right, guys, a little about Eric. Eric Dodds leads the product marketing team at RudderStack and co-hosts the Data Stack show. He runs data-driven growth at multiple companies, several of which have reached high scale. Throughout his career, he's gone through deeper into data stack to understand the technical foundations of well-run data stacks. When he's not thinking about data or marketing, he's probably spending time with his family or out in the woods, mountain biking and all of those stuff. So I'm kind of interested to learn more about that as well. So you can have questions around mountain biking and all of those for Eric. But without any further ado, I know people or you guys are already here. I can see Dustin joining us. Swaroop is here. All right, guys. Without any further ado, let's have Eric here. Hey, Eric, welcome to the Robert Show. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Awesome. I was just telling people more about what you do, and obviously also about what topics we'll be talking about today. One, definitely I want to learn more about modern data stack, but not only just that, I know for a fact you guys have come up with a guide on data maturity, and I would definitely want to learn more about that as well. Anything around data challenges, how's the data engineering space right now, how does it look, and all of those things. So can't wait. But why not, for our audience, introduce yourself, Eric?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Eric. Obviously, my background is actually in marketing. I'm one of those strange people these days who studied marketing in university. And now I'm still working in marketing. Have taken a couple detours along the way and have always loved data. I like to tell people that my two favorite subjects in school were statistics and consumer behavior. So I was bound to do something in data-driven marketing, So that makes a lot of sense. But I've always had a love for technology. Started building websites at a young age. Was very involved in that and various marketing projects early on in my career. And then ended up running growth at multiple companies with a heavy emphasis on data-driven growth, trying to understand attribution and customer journeys and all of those things. And that really ultimately led me deeper and deeper into the data stack, right? Trying to put together the components that actually allow you to truly do data-driven growth. If you try to do that, is actually very hard. It's very technical. It requires a lot of collaboration with data teams, engineering teams, product teams, etc. So I did that for a while. And then after the last company I was with exited, I started a small consultancy helping companies build out their data stacks. That's actually where I found RudderStack. Actually, we were looking for, for a solution that actually ultimately was a segment alternative, just because there are a number of issues that we experienced a segment from a technical standpoint, pricing standpoint, etc. So found RudderStack, used it, implemented it, and then they asked me to come join the team at RudderStack, which sounded great. So I did, and I actually joined on the customer success side. So my initial time at RudderStack was building out the customer success team and helping customers go live with the product, which was a little sort of detour in my career, which was great. And, then we were looking to build out the marketing function, and I had a background in that, so took that over and have done a number of things. So, built out demand generation and now focusing on product marketing. And throughout all of that, have used RudderStack to sort of build the foundation of our analytics and growth and all of that, along with other people in the team. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, that's fantastic. From obviously, I can only imagine how difficult it is when you are in the marketing field, and then obviously you may have like the tech things kind of coming in. So you're doing all the hard things, and you are doing it very right for RudderStack. That's what we can see. But I'm kind of curious, obviously, in terms of even in being in this, being coming from a marketing background and working into the marketing, I'm sure you're kind of very close to the space where you're working closely with the data professionals and the data engineers out there. And today we have like a very hot and booming space which is data engineering. Can you tell us more about the current data engineering industry? How do you look at it, and what do you feel about it?
Sure, absolutely. I think that there's been an interesting shift. So if you rewind, let's say maybe 10 to 15 years ago, actually IT and engineering they owned sort of all of the data, right? Because they own the systems that operated the data, and a lot of stuff was on-prem, right? Internal tooling, customer-focused tooling, marketing tooling, sales tooling, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
IT managed all of that because that's how software was delivered, right? And so interestingly, back then, marketing and sales and other go-to-market functions relied really heavily on the IT and engineering organization because they owned all the data. As we saw the dot-com boom and the digital customer journey sort of exploded, of course that happened around 2000, and then sort of late in that decade, we had the iPhone emerge. We had cloud data warehouses start to emerge, et cetera. And so the appetite for data across the organization just absolutely exploded. So after 2010, really what we had was a situation where IT and engineering struggled to deliver data to the teams as fast as they wanted it, right? The ability for IT to deliver that it couldn't keep pace with the appetite for downstream teams who wanted to optimize campaigns, provide better customer service, et cetera. And that was really the era of like self-serve SaaS with data, and marketing was sort of exhibit A, right? And I was right in the middle of that, working at some companies that were scaling, and it was a really interesting time, right? You have, that's when HubSpot came of age, big email marketing tools, all the major email marketing tools like MailChimp, all those tools, like you didn't have to work with IT in order to collect customer data and then act on it anymore, which for marketers was really, really awesome. But then you run into this challenge as you scale where you say, okay, well, marketing can kind of like run their own SaaS tools and collect their data and use it. And then CS can do the same thing, and sales can do the same thing. And then product can kind of do the same thing. And then what you end up with is actually just a bunch of data silos, right? And so you have all these local optimizations, and no team is actually reading from the same source of truth. They all have their own source of truth. And because they're different systems, you run into obvious problems there as you try to optimize your business. And so it's all of that background to say, I think we're entering a phase now that is driven by two major forces. One is that the promise of SaaS for those downstream teams has reached its limit in terms of its value because those tools are designed for very specific use cases, marketing or customer success or whatever. And so their purview is kind of limited to what they can do with that kind of data. And companies can't optimize without a centralized data source. So and ultimately that's a technical problem, right? That's not a problem with downstream teams. That's a technical problem. So ultimately, like, a lot of the responsibility is going back to IT and engineering because they need to collect the data and break down those silos, which again is a technical problem. You also have the rise of the cloud data warehouse and the data lake, where you can actually collect that data, and then all of the tooling around it that makes it easy to use that data when it's collected, right? So teams are getting easy access to unified data in the data lake or the data warehouse. And so I think we're in the very early innings of that, where we're starting to see the responsibility for data shift back to IT and engineering from siloed SaaS tools. And we're starting to see some really cool technology that's making it easy for teams to work off of that unified set of data. And there are a million different ways to construct a stack around that. We can talk about that, but I think that's where we're at. And I think a lot of data engineers, data analysts, analytics engineers, I mean, there are a number of different job titles popping up, but they're sort of in the thick of that, dealing with a fairly complex stack, a fairly new set of tools, and they're trying to provide business value. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, that's super insightful, Eric. Definitely, that also brings me to something which is very important about, when we talk about data, the question that arrives to me first is like the challenges. And since we are obviously, I want to learn more about the RudderStack as well. So,
Sure.
what are some of the most critical data challenges you have at RudderStack, and how are you solving those problems?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think one of the challenges that we face, which I think a lot of companies are facing, is that the technology enables you to do a lot of things that are probably more advanced than your organization is ready for. Right? You have tools like Snowflake or dbt, or these other tools that are used at Fortune 500 enterprises, but are also available to companies like RudderStack, where we have 150 or so employees, probably more at this point. I haven't checked. And so you have these really powerful tools, but when you're a company of a smaller size, how do you operationalize that without a large data team and sort of get full use out of the tools? Which has been really interesting for us, right? A lot of times you start with an analyst, because BI and analytics tend to be really important in your early stages. So I would say that's been an interesting challenge for us, just to figure out how to resource that. And happy to talk through that. The short story is that we've set up a team internally who there are people from different parts of the company, including myself, who are essentially sort of an internal SWAT team that acts as a data team, without that being your full-time job necessarily. So we have people from multiple different parts of the organization, which is interesting.
Right.
I would say in terms of specific data challenges, which is maybe more fun for some of the listeners, there are actually two things that come to mind that have been interesting data challenges. One is trying to figure out how to create really good reporting and insights around volume. So, we are obviously a software company and people use our product. And so you have in SaaS the concept of feature adoption or feature usage, right? And in direct to consumer businesses like Airbnb, for example, you may roll out a feature that is instant book or something like that, and you're tracking how many people actually engage with this feature and use it. And we do similar things to that. But one interesting part about our business is that one vector in our pricing model is event volume. And volume is throughput through our infrastructure, right? And it's not a feature, right? It actually is something that happens like in the infrastructure of our product. And it's really interesting. It's been really interesting to figure out how to collect that data and distribute it into downstream tools in a way that it's really useful, right? So if you think about that and just, say like a Postgres database or something, it's fairly straightforward. But how do you actually capture event volume and measure it over time and distribute that to a tool like Salesforce in a way that's very consumable for a sales rep? So that's been a really fun challenge for us to work on, because you have all sorts of ways to cut that data, right? Is it cumulative volume against a contract? Is it monthly usage? Is it, there are a number of different ways to slice that data. Pardon me. Nice. So that's been a really fun one to work on. The other one I would say, hold on, I'm just going to get a drink of water.
Until then, for those who are attending, just wanted to let you know about the giveaway. Don't forget to obviously type in hashtag RudderStack. We are giving away a very cool, I would say, AirPods. So don't forget to put in hashtag RudderStack in there. Eric, you good?
Yes. Sorry about that.
No worries. Yep.
The other one is looking at users versus accounts. So again, if you think about a consumer business, you may have a user that signs up for an app and they onboard, use the app, etc. But with a tool like RudderStack, you may have multiple people using the app and they have different roles within their organization,
right?
And even different roles within their usage of RudderStack as a product, right? So you may have someone who is doing configuration, you may have someone who is doing administration, etc. And from a marketing and sort of onboarding standpoint, when we think about that, the customer journey actually becomes very complex to figure out, because the first person who visits the website might not be the first person who signs up for the application.
Right.
That might not be the person who's the decision maker, in terms of signing a contract with sales. And then you have additional people who may enter the picture after a contract is signed, who actually use the app on a day-to-day basis. And so that customer journey can get pretty complex when you have multiple different types of personas, both exploring, onboarding, purchasing, and then ultimately using software. And so from a marketing perspective, of course, that's a really interesting problem, because if you look at first touch, attribution, the people who initially visit the website and then who ultimately sign up, and the differences in those personas, that's been a really fun attribution challenge for us to try and solve, because you have a lot of fragmentation on an account basis. And so looking at an individual user doesn't actually tell you the whole story about, how a company engages with your marketing material, then engages with your product, and then ultimately purchases and uses your product.
Okay, that's pretty interesting, and those are definitely great challenges to solve. We have a lot of questions coming in. We also have a comment here from Dustin. So Dustin is saying data is a passionate topic. I have lost my voice when talking about it too. It's the passion, Eric.
Yes, thank you. It is the passion.
Yeah, and another comment from AMA is attribution problems can be complex but so impactful.
Totally. 100%.
Awesome. One quick question I would want to take here is about this one. What are some of the data points that companies look for in a report? Like, what type of problems you've solved? Are those like the data points, or any other points that you feel that companies kind of look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. this may not be a direct answer, but I would actually say that it's probably not helpful to talk about the specific data points because that's going to vary company to company, right?
Mm-hmm.
We may track a certain metric that is meaningless to your particular company.
Yep.
And so even though a lot of the things I just mentioned are really specific data points, all of those actually ultimately roll up to KPIs for us as an organization. So a couple examples of those may be account activation as a KPI.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes very complex when you think about it in terms of servicing multiple users who may be involved in an account actually being active on the platform. And so that's where the data points become complex, but ultimately we wrap those up into KPIs that are measurable and then are tied to our business goals ultimately. So I would say your data points actually should just ladder up to or represent the things that ultimately materialize in the KPIs that are important to your business. So I know that's kind of a non-answer, but that's what we found is the best way to do it because our data points actually change a lot too, right? We may change the onboarding flow. We may change roles. We may change our attribution model.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, all your data points change. And so if they're not anchored in KPIs, then, it's easy to cause a lot of confusion within the organization.
Okay, that's pretty. I think that's like a good overview that you've given, Eric. So definitely answers for Manisha. Also, we have a very quick question here from Christine. So why do you call it RudderStack?
That's a great question. Well, the stack part obviously comes from, the data stack and building a data stack. And the rudder is representative of a boat rudder. And, early on in the company, we would talk about having control over your customer data or steering your customer data, like a rudder steers a ship. And so that's where the name originally came from. So sort of a maritime reference for you.
Okay, that's very cool. Another one here from YouTube that I'll pick from Sonia is how important is data driven today? Data driven culture is something I guess.
It's hugely important. I would say that depending on the type of business, being data driven is the difference between being able to survive and not survive in some cases, right? If your competition can learn more about their customer than you can learn about yours faster, they're probably going to outpace you. And learning more about your customers requires data.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Also, I had this question. Obviously, we've had Soumyadeb on the show as well, the founder of RudderStack, and he spoke about data maturity journey. And also recently, like I said, you guys released a in-depth guide about data maturity. So my question is, obviously you've been at RudderStack since I guess the seed stage. Can you tell us where RudderStack is in its journey and how data needs, the how has it evolved as a company and grown? So you've spent like a lot of years at RudderStack, so you're like the
Yeah,
right person to give us an idea where it has, now at what level and what type of journey is RudderStack having right now.
sure. It may be helpful for me to just start by quickly explaining the phases of the data maturity journey that we outline, and definitely download the guide if you haven't. But the phases are the starter stack, the growth stack, the machine learning stack, and then the real-time stack. The starter stack is really all about solving integration problems across your data stack. So inevitably, you have different versions of the truth in different tools. Google Analytics says one thing, your marketing tool says another thing, your CRM says another thing. And ultimately, that's because you're not collecting data from a single source. You're collecting data individually for those specific tools, right? So maybe you're running a Google Analytics script, you're running, a script for your email marketing tool or marketing automation tool, etc. And all of those have their own data model, their own way of collecting data. And so that's why there's just a pervasive problem across the industry of, a web team looking at conversions in Google Analytics. And for some reason, that number doesn't match the actual number of emails that we have, in our CRM or our marketing automation tool. Right? Mm-hmm. Pervasive problem. Well, why is that? Ultimately, it's because you're running those data flows independently. And then the problem becomes very complex, right? Then you're sending data like ad conversion data to Facebook and to Google Ads and all these different places, and the numbers just don't match up. And so the starter stack is all about unifying data collection and data integration to downstream tools to a single pipeline. So that way, every tool is getting the same version of the truth. And that's really the foundation of starting to become data-driven and having a stack that allows you to become data-driven. The growth stack, which is the next phase, is once your downstream teams and your sort of team-specific tools are operating from the same version of the truth, you want to start to answer more complex questions, right? Once you have all the numbers aligned in your SaaS tools, you start to ask questions that your SaaS tools aren't capable of answering, right? So, what is lifetime value? What is the full customer journey? Right, from first website visit all the way through to, maybe contract renewal. Well, you can't do that in Google Analytics. You literally just can't. It's not what it's designed for. And that's where the cloud data warehouse comes in. And so you can collect all of that data into the cloud data warehouse. So you pull in behavioral data, you pull in relational data from your marketing tools, sales tools, transactional tools, etc. And then you can perform more interesting analyses as sort of the first step. So you have warehouse-driven analytics and BI. And that's where your team really starts to unlock insights that allow you to scale in a way that you can't just relying on SaaS tools. Once you begin to uncover those insights with a unified data set in your warehouse, the next thing is we want to take action on that. Okay, well, now we know who our most valuable customers are when we consider the entire life cycle of the customer journey from first website visit to contract renewal, or repeat purchase, or whatever. Okay, well, now what do we do with that? That's the ultimate question. Knowing that is very difficult, actually, and that's a non-trivial challenge, collecting all the data and then deriving those insights. With analytics on a data warehouse. But then ultimately, what you want to do is take action on that. We want to, have specialized offers and experiences and customer support and everything for our most valuable customers, right? Or spend less time on customers that aren't profitable, etc. And so in order to do that, you actually have to take those insights and get them back out of the warehouse. And so that means activating data from the warehouse. The pipeline that has sort of gained a lot of recent popularity for that has been called reverse ETL, which, we can talk about if you want. That data flow has been around for a long time. Reverse ETL is just sort of a marketing term that's come up in the last couple of years. And several startups have popped up in the last couple of years. And that's really where the growth stack sort of comes to full maturity, where you're collecting all of your data in a warehouse, you're deriving really powerful insights, and then you're taking action on those insights. So that's the growth stack. The machine learning stack is where you move from acting on analyses that are based on historical data to being predictive, right? So instead of saying who are our most valuable customers, we want to treat them differently. You say who's most likely to become a most valuable customer, and we want to start treating them differently before we know that. Right? So we can increase their lifetime value, repeat purchase rate, etc., ahead of time. And that's where you introduce machine learning componentry, and you're essentially running machine learning models or algorithms to sort of predict that. And then real-time stack, we don't have to get into deeply, but that's where you basically take the results from machine learning and then modify the user experience in real time. So you're making recommendations for products, search results, etc., based on what you know about the customer in real time. So those are the phases of the data maturity journey. And at RudderStack, I would say, are sort of late stage growth stack, or maybe very early stage machine learning stack. So we have behavioral data coming in through RudderStack Event Stream. We're pulling relational data in from our marketing and CRM and customer success tools via ETL, our RudderStack ETL pipelines. We're modeling all of that. So all of our key KPI reporting, customer journey reporting, all of that sort of stuff is run out of Snowflake. We're heavy users of dbt as well. We also do a lot of our own internal modeling in conjunction with the product team. And so we're doing interesting things like calculating lead scores and other components like that based on the data in Snowflake. And then we're using RudderStack's reverse ETL pipeline to pipe that back into our marketing and sales tools. So we're modifying email campaigns, we're prioritizing leads, etc.
Nice.
Based on that warehouse data. And then we've started to use machine learning on the attribution side, actually. So when we talk about earlier, we talked about sort of the complex customer journey and accounts and other things like that. We're actually looking at different machine learning models to help us understand the customer journey. So that was a lot, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of where we're at in our own data maturity.
Yeah, I think this is amazing. You've shared some amazing insights, Eric. Thanks for that length answer. And also for those who want to actually learn more about data maturity and what Eric was talking about, and if you want to have a look, and you can download the book for free. I've mentioned the link in the chat, so you guys can go and learn more about it from the book itself. I've already read it. I've also shared it in my I guess the post as well. But yeah, we have a lot of comments. Let's take this one.
Sure.
First of all, a few funny comments from Scott. Scott says, how's this? Use hashtag RudderStack to steer through your data lake.
That's great. I will absolutely share that with the larger marketing team.
So cool. And he also mentioned about when you said about the reverse ETL, he said, I used reverse ETL with Auto AI and now my data runs backward.
I love it. That's great, Scott.
Awesome. So a question here from Dustin. So have you helped with any use cases for white space analysis, example, finding opportunities to sell customers with purchase histories that are at a level below than that of a customer that matches their profile, industry size, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's something that we see a lot of our customers doing. And that's really based off of having the comprehensive data set in your warehouse. And so you can actually pull together all those data points. And generally, like, machine learning can be very helpful with that. And there are actually a number of tools that can augment that, even if you don't have a data scientist. But we definitely see that. Several of our e-commerce companies or e-commerce customers, customers in the travel space, actually, when you think about travel history, you may have someone who doesn't travel very much. But if you can actually gain a good understanding of what's important to them and present them with offers that really align with their sort of specific preferences around travel, you can actually encourage them to travel more. which is really interesting. Demographics are a huge component of that too, right? Is it an individual traveler? Do they travel with someone? There are a number of components there that that can heavily influence that. But yeah, that's something that we see a lot of our customers do, Dustin. That's a great question.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks for that. Also, we have one question here from Kate. Kate is joining us. Okay. Hey, Kate, thanks for joining. So Kate is asking, tell us about how you celebrated the milestone of RudderStack getting the Google Cloud ready BigQuery designation. How was that?
Oh, with champagne, of course. The entire company had a glass of champagne. No, I would say we celebrated it like we celebrate a lot of things that we, that was a big milestone for us.
Yep.
We're super excited about that. We have a great partnership with Google, and what we generally do is we get very excited about it. We celebrate, and then we put our heads back down and get back with Google and say, what's the next thing that we're going to partner together on? Celebrate for a few minutes and then get back to work to figure out how we can make the integration even better.
That's very cool. Amazing. Also, another question here from Dominic. Dominic is from Single Store. So he has a question. What's the size of your data set, or how much data are you doing ML?
Dominic, that's a great question. That's kind of a hard question to answer depending on what you would include in the data set. The honest answer is I don't know the full size of our data set. But as we've grown, we generate a significant amount of website traffic. We actually enrich a lot of our data with third-party data sets as well. And so it's become fairly large as we've grown as a company. And when we're doing ML, we're generally doing it over a pretty significant data set, especially when it comes to attribution. A lot of those are digital touch points, page views, etc. So I don't know the exact answer, but it's pretty large for a company our size. And certainly more than enough to be statistically significant and have valid ML results. But that's a great question because, and this may not be behind the question, but I think it is. Running ML on a small data set can be precarious, and you can run into issues there. So we're really careful to make sure that we have a large enough data set, for the ML process to be valid and actually helpful.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's what Dominic actually puts out a comment, that you need very large data sets and M to be worthwhile and reliable. So makes sense.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, let's take this one as well. So Bulan wants to know, is Amplitude part of RudderStack by any chance?
We do use Amplitude for some product analytics, for some product analytics stuff. We actually have an interesting dynamic as a company in that we have partnerships with a lot of different tools. So we actually use multiple analytics tools, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, having like a huge suite of analytics tools, but our product team tests a huge number of analytics tools because we build integrations with all those tools. And so we actually have the chance to send our production data into a number of different tools like Amplitude and test them out, which is really fun. I'm a huge nerd when it comes to data tooling. So yeah, we do use Amplitude for some things. We also use Mixpanel for some things as well. Those are sort of two competing companies, both really great tools. And we actually get the chance to use a ton of them. So yeah, we have tried most things out there just from a testing standpoint. But yeah, we do use Amplitude in production along with Mixpanel and a number of other analytics tools.
Okay, that's fantastic. That definitely answers for Bulan. Also, another question here from someone from YouTube. Are there any customers in the AR, VR, XR using RudderStack?
Oh, that is a great question. Yes, there are actually. We
Hmm.
do have customers in the AR space.
Oh,
Yeah, several, I think, actually. We were just talking about this. So yes, we do service that.
okay.
When you think about event data and AR, there's a lot of really interesting data. I think probably the closest corollary on the web is maybe like heartbeat events from video,
Hmm.
that are sending almost real-time data on status. And so we have some customers doing some really cool things with AR, VR.
Okay, that's very cool. Also, since we are talking a lot around data, and that also brings me to something which is the talk of the hour. And so, what does RudderStack's data stack look like at a high level? Like, obviously, we've known about how you guys have like about the data sets. We've spoken about a little about the clients, how you're working, about the data maturity model. But how does the data stack look like?
Yeah, for sure. I will just give you the quick run through. So we collect behavioral data from our website and
Mm-hmm.
our web application, via our own SDKs. So we run the JavaScript SDK on our website, and then our web app, we run the JavaScript SDK, we run the Node SDK, and then we actually have a Go SDK as well, for Golang,
Nice.
because our app is written in Golang. And those are emitting various types of data. Node and Go SDKs are emitting various types of data server side. And that flows to all of the tools in the stack. So, of course, we do product analytics, with Amplitude and Mixpanel. We
Mm-hmm.
do route data to Google Analytics Cloud Mode. We don't run the Google Analytics SDK. It gets blocked too much. And, generally they're like the data that Google Analytics collects, we found to be way less reliable than our own first party data. So we send that server side to Google Analytics. We send it to Salesforce, Customer IO. We route all the raw object data into S3. Our warehouse is Snowflake. So every raw event goes into Snowflake as well. We have a number of webhooks that serve different purposes, that we send data to as far as downstream destinations.
Mm-hmm.
Our customer success tools receive that data. I'm trying to think of other components. That's sort of the main flow in terms of SDKs that are sending event data, to our various downstream tools. We also have ETL pipelines. They pull in data
Mm-hmm.
from our marketing tool, our sales tool. We ETL data from our production databases. We pull in transactional data from a payments platform. And that's really how we build a lot of our business intelligence and analytics reporting, is by combining all of that data in Snowflake. We use our transformations feature in RudderStack pretty heavily. So that actually allows you to interact with data that's flowing through the pipelines in real time. And so, for example, when someone fills out a form on the site, we enrich the payload in real time via the Clearbit API, so that
Mm-hmm.
when the record hits our downstream marketing and sales tools, it includes, company size, industry, et cetera. And we can actually just go ahead and do segmentation immediately, for the sales team and the marketing team, so that they can take more intelligent actions downstream. We use Snowflake as a source as well. So I talked about calculating lead scores, updating account information for individual users who may sign up for a RudderStack account, providing that intelligence to downstream tools. Event volume we talked about, we collect that data in Snowflake, aggregate it, and then syndicate that to downstream tools as well. And so Snowflake actually acts as a source. And so we're sending that to our marketing tools, sales tools, analytics tools as well, so that we can build reporting around those things as well. One other interesting thing that we do is we actually have turned a lot of our SaaS destinations into event sources. So
Mm-hmm.
all of our email data from our marketing emails is routed back through RudderStack as events. And so we can actually capture those raw events in Snowflake and then send them to tools like Mixpanel, where we do analysis on email performance, which is really interesting. So we can actually see, first website visit all the way through like email engagement in an event-based tool like Mixpanel, or interact with the raw data and build reports based on Snowflake because we have the raw data there. And then we actually trigger events out of Salesforce as well, which I know sounds weird because that's not something that's commonly done. But when certain actions happen in Salesforce, we trigger events that fire to a RudderStack webhook source. So when an opportunity stage changes, we actually create an event that fires out of Salesforce, fire that into a RudderStack webhook source, and then we can get that event both in Snowflake and in our downstream analytics tools, so that we can analyze things like, did our marketing emails influence an opportunity stage change? So there are a number of things we do with sort of creating loops through RudderStack from downstream SaaS tools that are really helpful as well. We use Tableau as our main sort of BI function for KPIs, which is pretty standard. And then we run on the Amazon stack for anything ML. So we're using SageMaker and sort of the basic tools there. So yeah.
Very cool. And where do you see the next evolution of your data stack?
Yes. So as you can probably tell, we're probably doing a lot of things that are maybe like a little bit unnecessary for a company of our size. But we are data nerds and data lovers ourselves, and so we tend to just love to tinker with this stuff, and we actually have the benefit of helping build some of this stuff for our customers too. The next thing we're working on is actually a real-time sort of we kind of call it customer 360, available in real time anywhere in your stack. And so if you think about what we've talked about in terms of us collecting, all of the relevant information about the customer in Snowflake, we have event volume usage, we have opportunity stage from Salesforce, we have email engagement, we have all of the website and web app behavioral data. We know, everything there is to know about our user. And so we can really truly build a 360-degree view of the customer, which allows us to build really good analytics and then send that data from Snowflake to the downstream tools, which is really helpful. But the next step is actually being able to access that information in real time as a user is doing something. So for example, wouldn't it be great to know if a new user signs up for our application who's part of an existing account? Wouldn't it be really helpful to know which features that account has activated on in real time, so that you could present that user with a prompt to maybe activate on a feature that hasn't been activated on before, right? Well, now you're talking about accessing a lot of information about an account in real time. And so we actually have a prototype of this up and running, which is really fun. We're using a tool called Redis, which is a real-time sort of in-memory cache. And we're pushing all of that data out of Snowflake up into Redis that has an API. And so when a new user signs up for an account, we can actually use our transformations feature to access that account information in real time, pull that information back down, and then sort of, working on things like modifying the onboarding experience based on what we know about that user and the account. And so you can kind of think about it as your customer 360 living in the cloud and fully available at any point in the stack when a user is doing something. And so we're super excited about that because I think we're going to be doing some fun stuff with it.
Okay, that's very cool. Very good information. Thanks for that, Eric. And we have a question here. Though Eric has a lot of questions, Justin has a lot of questions there, and some amazing questions. He's asking, is the 360-degree view made available to business stakeholders via Tableau?
It is. Yes, it is. Yep. So we push all of that. We make all of that data available for sure. And so Tableau is really good at drill down. I mean, people have a lot of different feelings about Tableau. Some people, some people think it's really slow. It is kind of slow, but it's a really powerful tool. We also use some other tools, but that's where we keep our main KPIs. But yeah, it's definitely available in the analytics. But actually, what's even more interesting, Dustin, is that we have the ability to access that via RudderStack's reverse ETL, and we have a thing called models. And so we actually, like, our marketing team will actually query the customer 360 table in order to pull information into the user profiles in the email marketing tool for more advanced segmentation. And so not only can we access it from an analysis standpoint, but it's actually even better than that. We can actually access the customer 360 table from an activation standpoint. And so it really is pretty powerful.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Also, he mentions about the use case. Dodds love that use case, especially if that recommended feature is based upon a ML model that continually evaluated features being utilized by other similar customers.
Yep. I mean, that's the goal, right, Dustin? Is if we can identify those patterns over time, and then modify the experience with ML, 100%.
Okay, that's amazing. Also, a quick question here from Manisha. So the topic is here. Where do you think RudderStack fit in the modern data stack, Eric?
Oh man, this is a great question. It's kind of a bigger question about the modern data stack. I would say, Manisha, it's a great question. I would say that the modern data stack is a term that I think is a little bit overused in that it really focuses on the tooling as opposed to the use cases. And so we certainly have multiple components of our product that people would consider part of the modern data stack from a technical standpoint. But really, what we have learned from our customers is that the modern data stack ultimately means that you're building really powerful use cases for your business on a unified data store that has your customer 360 in it. And you need to use that in a number of ways. And so I would say this is a little bit of a non-answer, Manisha, so I apologize in advance. But our role in the modern data stack is enabling you to make the most use to, number one, help you build a customer 360 in, wherever you want to store that in your centralized data store, data warehouse, data lake house, if you want to go there. And then to activate on that in the way that makes most sense for your business. And the reality is RudderStack covers, a number of different pipelines and technical components there. But your modern data stack is going to include a lot of tools in addition to RudderStack. But our goal is to help you build the customer 360 and to take action on it in the way that's best for your business, and ultimately to integrate with the other tools that you're inevitably going to need in order to make use of that customer 360, whether that's marketing engagement or ML tools or whatever. So that's really where we view our role, is helping you build and take action on your customer 360, no matter what tools you're using.
Okay, that's very cool. Awesome. Thanks for that question and great answer, Eric. Before we wrap up, obviously, I want to learn more about, actually have some tips from you for any of those data engineers out there. So do you have like some tips for data engineers that you would like to share?
Oh, for data engineers. Oh,
Yeah.
man. I mean, I'm not a data engineer, so I feel a little bit self-conscious trying to give advice. I think that maybe this is the best way to answer that question. I think the best data engineers that I have worked with at RudderStack and in other companies
Mhm.
really don't focus on the tooling, and they really they tend to have a lot of empathy for what their internal customer is trying to accomplish. And so a good example of that would be like attribution or customer journey analysis at RudderStack. So I've worked very closely with data engineers and data scientists on our team. And what's been amazing to me is that whenever we meet to discuss that from a marketing standpoint, they never talk about tooling, and they actually, amazingly, they don't talk a ton about the data. They
Mhm.
really want to understand the question that we're trying to answer. And in
Nice.
fact, they push really hard on making the marketing team articulate exactly what it is they want to know. And
Nice.
for them, the data and the algorithm are a byproduct of understanding the question that needs to be answered. And so, whatever pipelines we need, whatever, sort of data structures we need, and whatever algorithms that they run, all relate back to asking the right question. And so I guess I would say, I don't know if I have advice for you, but I would say that the best results that I've seen come from data engineers and data scientists who are really passionate about asking the right question and then going and figuring out, the infrastructure and the data. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thanks for that. And thanks for sharing that. Obviously, it's a real time thing which is happening in thanks for sharing that. But one last question that I have for you is, Eric, which is obviously my favorite question and audience love that, is if folks want to reach out to you and learn more about RudderStack, about product marketing, about data challenges, data stack,
Sure.
modern data stack, I don't know, I think we've spoken about so many things today, so I'm
Yes.
sure, and there were like a lot of questions as well. So if they want to reach out to you, what's the best place and to have those questions coming for you?
Sure. This may be maybe old school, but I love email, and so you can just shoot me an email. It's eric@rudderstack.com, eric@rudderstack.com. If I don't reply immediately, don't worry, I'll get back to you in a couple days. But as you can tell, I'm really passionate about this stuff. I love talking with you about data stuff. And if you have questions about RudderStack or about the data stack in general, would be more than happy to chat with you.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks again, Eric, for all the insights that you've given us. Learned a lot from you today around data maturity, RudderStack, data stack, and how RudderStack uses RudderStack. So thanks again for visiting the Rabbit Show, and thank you everyone in our audience for asking such amazing questions.
Oh, great questions.
Dustin highlighting those questions as well. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, Rabbit, thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.